Welcome to Update from the Hill. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me as always is Northumberland Peterborough South MP Philip Lawrence. And Philip, 100 days ago on the day of this taping, which is Friday, June 19th, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Let's reflect back to those 100 days and where we've come to now, and the fact that I think 100 days ago, nobody had really grasped how much this was going to affect everybody in this country and in the world.
Yeah, so I remember those early days. I can remember actually being in Parliament and discussing what we might be doing with our colleagues as to would we maybe go back to our ridings for a week and then come back. Maybe 2 weeks might be crazy. We weren't counting on the rest of Parliament being suspended, right? So certainly wild times back then. But I think part of life is those folks who are successful at life are able to realize that the situation that they are in a minute from now might be far different from a minute before, right? And adapt to those conditions. And quite frankly, the people of our riding, Mark, have done that, and we've really pushed the COVID back, and we've flattened the curve, and we've almost eliminated the curve. And doubtless, with people going out, there'll be some more cases that will come up. But the people of Northumberland and Peterborough South have rallied to a very changed world very quickly, and they've adapted and put ourselves in a great position. So congratulations to everyone out there.
To me, Philip, it seemed like the world's attention came really forefront on COVID-19 was the day that a basketball player in the NBA tested positive. They canceled the season immediately. All sports followed, and it seemed like all of a sudden it got real from that point on that, wow, this is going to be impacting our lives majorly here in the near future.
Yeah, I remember the big moment, and I remember that as well. And I'm not sure exactly where the timeline all fits together. It's a bit of a blur, to be honest, those early days. But the big point for me was when Sophie Trudeau, of course, the Prime Minister's wife, got the virus there. That was, and then next was having the Prime Minister of Britain also then getting it as well. But I remember that like that. That physically shook me when Sophie Trudeau got it, because it was fairly close to us, right, as parliamentarians, right, that well, this was real. And so I remember that was a big moment for myself personally in the evolution of the pandemic.
Reflect back, if you can, Philip, from with those 100 days about how far we've came, and how much our mindset has changed from, as you said, the early days where you're talking with colleagues at the house where it's like, all right, we'll go back to our riding for a week or two, we'll be back here and life will continue on as we thought it would and had been, in the previous weeks before that.
Yeah, it's. I remember actually, and I was speaking, so I think I'm allowed to sort of violate caucus confidentiality. But I remember being in the Ontario caucus, and Italy had just started to their cases started to increase, and there were some predictions that and that we were a week out from being like Italy, and it turned out more like 2 or 3 weeks. But I remember myself actually vocalizing that at the caucus meeting, and I got some head turns at that. But it turned out to be to be very precedent as to what actually happened. So it was amazing, like how quickly we adapted and we changed. And now I think we're getting to the other side of it. We do have to be aware of things like the second wave. But I'm also mindful of the former president's word that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And we certainly have COVID to fear as well as fear. But I think at this point, let's go out there and make sure we abide by all the social distancing rules for sure. And we stay 6 feet away, or we put a mask on. But let's go out there and help our local businesses, right? Because ultimately, the only thing that will get us through this is a strong economy. And that's done by people going out and doing the things that they normally do, just doing it in a safe way.
I agree. I think that aha moment for myself was listening to a report from Rick Westhead, who works with TSN, and he did the comparison with a doctor, and he said that from the start of the pandemic, Canada was like 2 weeks behind Italy, but we were almost on the same timeline as everything unfolded in Italy. It was happening in Canada 2 weeks behind. And I think at that point, it was when drastic measures were put in place, not only by the federal government, but all levels of government to curb this in quickly so we don't have what happened in Italy.
Right, and I remember we were pushing hard, and we actually got in some of the early days. Matt Jenneru, who's our health critic, absolutely fabulous guy. He is a young baby himself, and so he was given this a little inside baseball. But Matt was given this file, and health is generally. It's not one of the bigger portfolios to be candid, right? Like there's not a ton of action, and so he just has a young baby. And he's got this health portfolio because Marilyn Gladue, who stepped down for the leadership race, and also like Matt is in it, right? And despite the fact having a young family and everything like that, he's working 24 hours a day, and he was out there months before the borders were closed, saying, "Hey, we need to get the border closed." When others in the Liberal government were criticizing it, saying that perhaps this was xenophobic or other things, it turned out to be absolutely the right advice. And if we had done that, we would have gotten ahead of this. And so like I said, those leaders, those individuals who are successful in life, realize what the world is, what the situation is today in the moment, not what it was 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and can see forward and are forward thinking, right? So.
You're watching Update from the Hill. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me, as always, is Northumberland Peterborough South MP Philip Lawrence. And Philip, one of those early reactions that the government made was to bring in the CERB to help those employees that would be affected to be out of work. We've been wondering for the last number of weeks what was going to happen next, because we knew that the CERB was going to be coming to an end for many Canadians from coast to coast. Announced earlier this week that the CERB is going to be extended for another 8 weeks. Give me your reaction on that, and if you think this was the right decision or if this was the easiest decision to make by the government.
Yeah, and so let me first of all just frame it up a little bit. You did a great job there, Mark. But we've got people who, if they took the CERB at the very beginning in March 15th, when June their CERB would be coming to an end, and the economy hasn't fully reopened. Those jobs are certainly not back there, and those, particularly some of those folks who had jobs before that could have applied for EI afterwards, but particularly people in the gig economy, people who are self-employed, it would have been very challenging. I'm thinking directly if there's a number, but just one that comes to mind are folks who are in any type of the arts, any type of live performance. Like that's done for that. Tourism, the border's now been extended, closed to July 21st. So it's a real challenge for those people, and it's really things beyond their control. However, what I would have liked to seen is in addition to extending that and making sure that people have a bridge to get to the post-pandemic world, I would have loved to have seen something where we would have been able to incentivize work better than what we're currently doing, right? So, for example, if you're an actor and or an actress and and so maybe the live performances you haven't been, but you're able to get a commercial, some type of gig, as it were, and if that commercial pays $1,001, you're going to lose $2,000, right? If it pays $999, you'll get the CERB benefit, that additional $2,000. We need to stagger it so that every time you work, you always make more money, right? So maybe we reduce it 30 cents on a dollar, 50 cents on a dollar, whatever that number would be, because we need to get people gradually back into work. And to be honest, I was up in Ottawa for a meeting, and I'm listening to some of the servers talk at a patio that I'm at, and they're talking about how many shifts they need to work to stay under that $1,000. And yeah, that's not how the legislation is designed. If you're working, if you have the ability to work, you should work to the maximum. I get that, but human beings are also self-interested creatures, right? And so we're gonna follow that path that helps us in our best interest, right? So so we need to incentivize work. We shouldn't force people to be in a decision to whether to quote unquote cheat the system to make an extra $2,000, because if you earn $1,001, that's not going to pay for your rent. You're not going to get fed on that. So there's a huge temptation and a real moral hazard to people saying, well, I'm going to stop working at $999 and collect the other $2,000 because otherwise I can't feed my family. And so that's the gaping hole that's still in the system. And so while I'm glad that we've extended and helped those people, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's disincentivizing work and preventing Canadians from what they want to do, which is work as hard as they can.
So we've extended it for 8 weeks, Philip, which is another 2 months for these individuals. By all accounts, from economists, from people in the business world, they're saying that in 8 weeks we may not be any farther ahead than what we are now, depending on how things unfold. So, what is the plan in another 8 weeks?
Yeah, so that's a question that we'll be asking Prime Minister Trudeau over and over and over again. Here, for what I want to see, and is I want to see us get ourselves in a position where we are encouraging work and stimulating the economy. Ultimately, the long-term or even the mid-term solution to this is not government programs. It's the private sector. It's productivity. Canada going into this was among the lowest of the developed countries in productivity. And productivity sounds like a fancy word. All it is the ability to make stuff, make it inexpensively, and make high quality stuff and deliver high quality services. We're in the lower tier of that. Ultimately, if we can produce stuff better than other countries, that means that we can sell more of it. That brings more wealth back to Canada, more jobs back to Canada, and creates more tax revenue. So we need to have programs that incentivize work, incentivize wealth creators. We need lower taxes, less regulation. We need to get our business owners and our workers to do what they do best, which is contribute to our economy.
Philip, we're up on our first break, but when we come back, we'll talk about a wild week that happened at the House of Commons this week, with the NDP leader being thrown out of the House. I'll get you to give us an update on what happened with the disability pay. I know it was coming back to the House this week, and we'll talk about the border as well. You're watching Update from the Hill. I'm Mark Rockburn. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to Update from the Hill. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me as always is Northumberland Quinte West MP Philip Lawrence. And Philip, it was a wild week on Parliament Hill during the times that the House actually did seat. Let's give us an update first on where we sit with the disability pay. I know it was part of a bigger package last week that got voted down by the other parties. It didn't get unanimous support because it contained many different options other than this disability pay. It was being brought back this week. What's the update on that?
Yeah, so we are still attempting to get that passed. We don't have the legislation in place as of now. And I would just go back to the fact that we need Parliament in session. This is why we have Parliament. We did not sit for 3 or 4 months, and I am more than happy to. I mean, I don't have the events, quite frankly, in the riding. I can do all my Zoom calls with all my constituents here. And so I would love to be in Ottawa for the next couple of months doing the people's business. There's a lot, obviously disabilities is a huge one, but there's a lot of things we have to get done, including getting the economy reopened, working with provincial parliament colleagues and partners to do that. We need to be creating an environment for business. We need to look at that deficit, and we're getting from the Minister of Finance a financial snapshot. I don't know what a financial snapshot is. That's not a term that's ever been used before. So maybe he's just going to take his iPhone and take a picture of the balance sheet, but he has the projections. They run them every day. He just needs to share them with us. So we need to get Parliament back is the long and short of the answer to get disability, to get a number of things going, including the economy. There's literally billions of dollars, thousands, if not millions of jobs are riding on the work that we're going to do. So let's get back to Parliament. Let's get back to work.
So Phil, talk to me how the CERB can get extended 8 weeks through it, but the disability pay is still being talked about. Like, was there something in place with the CERB that had already gotten passed that could automatically get
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So they put in there that the regulation allowed for the extension of CERB, and so they don't require legislative oversight on that. So
Thank you for the clarification on that. Another topic that you touched briefly on is the fact that this week Prime Minister Trudeau did announce that we're going to see a fiscal and economic update come in July. What are you expecting to see, or do you have any idea what the countries can see come July?
yeah, so today our debt went over $1 trillion. So it's actually today, and so we're eager to see what the government is spending on, and where that money is going. And because one of our jobs, and actually it's dating hundreds of years back at the official opposition parties, is to hold, it's our constitutional duty to hold the government account for where all the money that the people's money from Northumberland, Peterborough South, and across the country is going. So what we will see, I do not know. I know the deficit spending will be tremendous, and we need to look at where those money are going for. I mean, right now we have 20,000 projects, billions of dollars, that the government doesn't know where it went. It's our job to make sure that we know where it is. As the PBO said, you know what, I believe that these projects exist. I just don't have any proof of it, which is a startling thing for your chief auditor to say. But
You're watching Update from the Hill. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me, as always, is Northumberland Peterborough South MP Philip Lawrence. And Philip, as I stated, it was a wild week in the House of Commons. One of the last things that occurred was the fact that Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, was kicked out of the House of Commons for supposedly racist. For calling Alain Theron a racist in the House. He was removed from the House, all stemming from the fact that a motion did not get a unanimous approval on the RCMP having systematic racism inside it. Where do you see this going? Because it seems like both sides are very firm on where they stand.
yeah, so first, I guess I have to clarify. I've been subbing in I've been on the agriculture and the finance committee, and so that has really been my focus. And in fact, I was either in committee or preparing for committee when the whole thing with Jagmeet erupted. And so my knowledge of it is really secondhand. But I guess my understanding is that Alain did objected to the unanimous motion, which was calling on the RCMP to deal with the systemic racism. And so I think we have real issues there, and that's why I was proud to go out at the Coburg Black Lives Matters anti-racism protest. Proud to stand there because we do have issues, and certainly folks who have lived experience in Canada, being a visible minority, I've heard numerous times that they are challenges, they face barriers that those folks who aren't visible minorities just don't face. And so we need to stand up. We need to take care of that. What I would say though, just as a general comment, is as Martin Luther King said, darkness doesn't cure darkness. Only sunlight cures darkness. Goodness cures evil. And so instead of bickering, fighting, name calling, arguing, let's work together. And certainly if we see racist behavior, let's call it out. But let's put that sunlight on that, and let's bring that wonderful disinfectant of sunlight to these things. And I think with these issues, the fighting, the bickering, like, this isn't partisan to me. This is just something as human beings we have to eliminate. And whether it's your gender, your sexual orientation, your race, we're in 2020. This just cannot be acceptable. And let's get rid of this, and let's not have the partisan bickering, and let's just commit everyone to grabbing each other's hand, walking forward, and recognizing that we're all human beings. We're all in this together, and we're all here to support each other.
The RCMP, Philip, has been in the light due to many issues, the way they've handled arrests across the province from coast to coast in the jurisdictions that they serve in this country. There has been a call for that all RCMP officers and all police officers should wear body cameras, so everything, all interactions are recorded. Your thoughts on that before we continue on down the road and with defunding police, or you can encompass all in one answer.
So just yeah, well, I'll start there. So the vast majority of individual police officers are great people. They are the people that when you are in trouble are the ones who rush into danger. They are the people who help people in some of the worst times of their lives. They are the people who take bad people and put them and protect us from them. So I'm friends with a number of the officers here in Coburg here. They are fantastic human beings, and they work so hard to keep us all safe. And if you know, if I'm being stalked by someone, if my daughter is facing domestic abuse, or if I'm being robbed or mugged, you know what? It's going to be them that are rushing it into it. So, do we need to probably help more of our social service? Yes, but do we need to do it at the cost of our police? No. And when I look at that, and like I said, there is systemic racism. I'll be clear about that, but we don't do that. We don't cure that by attacking other people. Hate doesn't get rid of hate. Love gets rid of hate. And so we need to have a more inclusive, more open society, and we need to not be just randomly criticizing the police, who are just like you and I, Mark. They want to go home, they want to take care of their families, they want to help people. And sure, there are some bad apples, and those people should have the book thrown at them. If you think that it's all right to hurt a helpless Indigenous or Black person, you are a bad person. You are a terrible person, and you have no place in Canada. Let me be clear about that. But just for just going and criticizing or painting the police all in one brush because there are some bad apples is not fair either. And I will stand up for our police officers every day of the week.
There's been a call, Philip, for an inquiry as to the way the RCMP operates with the way that they've handled some of their arrests, and that they should be overseen. The call to this point has not been answered by the RCMP officials. Do you think that something should be, do you think the RCMP should be looked into and how they operate?
I think that there's been enough troubling footage to be candid with you, that having someone take a look at that, I would be in favor of. I like I said, the best disinfectant in this world is sunshine, and so just like when I'm calling for the greater accountability for the Liberal government, I think all institutions of power, the more accountability, the more transparency we can have, the better. That's what separates Canada from many other countries in the world where they're facing deep levels of corruption. It's the fact that we're willing to look at our organizations, our institutions, and speak truth to power. And I will always support that.
The border was a big talking point this week, Philip. Not only was it extended closure for another 30 days to July 21st, but it was also open up for residents who live on both sides, that they can see their family. And some tourists have found some loopholes for the United States. Let's deal first with the fact that the border closure was extended for another 30 days till July 21st.
Yes, and I can understand the fact that we want to guard against this second wave. I would also, though, say we have a lot of business owners, a lot of tourists, organizations here that depend on the U.S. traffic, and so when it is at all, when it is safe, we need to get those tourists back. And what I would say though, this is a great time for a staycation. So if you traditionally go down to the Caribbean islands, or you go off to Europe, or you go down to Florida or California, now is a great time to check out some of the great places in Northumberland, Peterborough South, because those places will be hurting. Great resorts around Rice Lake, fantastic places to stay up in the Trent Hills, and there are just now is a great time to stay in Northumberland, Peterborough South. There's St. Anne's Spa is in our riding, and I will be taking my wife there. It's absolutely spectacular place there, and so please do help those businesses. I want to see the border open as soon as we can, so we can allow our American friends up to see the beautiful sights of Northumberland, Peterborough South.
When the border was closed, Philip, one of the things that some of the people that got trapped with the border closure was the fact that some couples live on both sides of the border. Husband lives on one side, wife lives on the other side due to work purposes, or they just live on both sides of the border, where they had been left out, being able to travel back and forth to be able to see it. But happy to hear that got resolved last week, that they can now resume visits with each other.
Yeah, we had pushed hard for that for a while. I mean, it would be a terrible situation, husband, wife, or no respect and no disrespect to my wife, but even worse for me would be separated from my kids. I could not imagine. It's tough enough when I'm up in Ottawa for a week or two. I couldn't imagine it being months and not seeing my 4 and my 6-year-old. She's 5 now. Happy birthday, Maggie. 5 and 6-year-old. So something, family reunification, like the as a Conservative Party, will always be supporting families, and we felt that was one of those things that was worth the health risk of getting families back together.
Philip, our time's up once again. It's been another quick half hour, so I thank you very much for making time today, and happy Father's Day to you and to all the fathers out there, and we'll catch up in another week's time.
Right back at you, Mark, there, and happy Father's Day to everyone out there.
You're watching Update from the Hill. I'm Mark Rockburn. We'll see you in 1 week's time.